Hey everybody, so today we're going to be talking about a very special PragerU video. So every so often, PragerU does this sort of informal book club thing, where they get some of their conservative lackeys to go through famous books and talk about how great and conservative they are. And in one of these videos, Dave Rubin and a guy named Mike Knowles go through George Orwell's 1984 with the express purpose of trying to connect Big Brother's Oceania to modern America, claiming that today's society is particularly Orwellian.
What George Orwell is describing here, the reason it resonates with, not just now, perhaps at a particularly Orwellian moment, but it has resonated for so many years.
So this video is pretty much just hog wild. Basically, from minute 1 to minute done, it is a fever dream of strange, unhinged claims about George Orwell's 1984 and about modern America. It's also pretty interesting, and today I'm excited to talk about it. By the way, this is another one of my less scripted videos. I don't have a formal script this time, since you guys liked it when I did that last time with the School of Life video. If you don't like this format, then you only have yourselves to blame for liking it in the first place. And with that out of the way, let's get started. So we can get a basic idea for what this video is going to be from one line that occurs toward the middle.
Well, what's interesting about this is I think when most people, maybe not my conservative friends, but when most people think of like the totalitarian, authoritarian state coming, they always think it's going to be a far right state. Like the idea in 1984 is that the Ministry of Truth, like the whole apparatus is somehow thought of as far right, I think is the idea. And yet look what's happening in reality now. In reality now, it's this far left thing that's seemingly bubbling up from the bottom.
Yeah.
So this is a super interesting line for me because it really gets at the basic problem that Dave Rubin and Mike Knowles are going to have as they step into this text. See, they want to talk about 1984. They want this famous cultural touchstone to be reflective of conservative ideology. But the fundamental issue is Orwell's book is about the impact of totalizing institutional violent power. And they can't really talk about that. They can't connect that to the real world. And that's because conservatives have that power. Conservatism, and more broadly speaking capitalism, is undeniably the most powerful force in America right now. And, PragerU and Dave Rubin like those things. They like them a lot. Therefore, they have to depart from 1984's critique in a pretty major way here, even as they act like it's no big deal. The problem in Orwell's society is clearly centered around power and its misuse. But to Dave Rubin, the problem must be coming from the powerless. It must be coming from the bottom. And this strange ham-fisted reinterpretation of 1984 is basically what the entire video revolves around. It informs both what they choose to criticize and how they go about criticizing it. And with that, let's actually jump in. So most of the time in this video is spent just regurgitating the 3 conservative culture war talking points that they always bring up. They want to find a connection between doublethink in the world of 1984 and today's society, and so they decide that anti-racism is like doublethink.
People who say they're anti-racist are the ones who are acting in a racist way, and the way George Orwell describes it is he calls it doublethink.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get rid of America's terrible past, which had segregation. And the way we're going to do that is institute segregation.
It's contradictory to think both that racism exists and that our solutions to it might have to fall along racial lines. It's impossible to hold those two thoughts in your head at once. It's beyond reason! Or trans people existing and wanting to be respected. That's a bit like Winston being brainwashed into thinking that 2 + 2 = 5.
This ties into the insistence of the government. You have to believe that 2 + 2 = 5, because if we all really believe that, then that will be true. And it seems to be the same thing when you call a he, when you call him her, you have really substantively changed who he is.
Yeah.
And that's a bit dumb, isn't it? I don't want to overplay my hand here or whatever, but Personally, I don't think that trans people are trying to brainwash us. Or, and this is one of my favorites, they claim that an NPR article that's advocating that we decolonize our bookshelves is essentially advocating for book burning.
The Nazis were literally burning books. What are we doing right now? Yeah. We're not burning books yet, although NPR did put out that thing about how you have to decolonize your bookshelf, which in essence is a modern book burning.
The books,
They're not going to write, oh, burn all your books, but they will say, get rid of bad books.
Yeah.
1984.
Which, you know what? I'll just give that one to Dave, I guess. NPR, when they were saying that you should read more diverse authors, was essentially advocating for book burning. I might disagree with Dave Rubin about a great many things, but that is a bulletproof argument. You know what? Let's actually look up the author of that article really quickly. Juan Vidal wrote the article. Juan, you have a lot of explaining to do, mister. I can't believe that NPR would hire you, given your Nazi sympathies. Oh, Juan Vidal, you have a lot of explaining to do, mister. Oh, Juan Vidal. Oh, Juan. But okay, I know what you might be wondering right now. So we have the ideology of our Big Brother society down, right? Racism is bad, and trans people should be afforded basic respect and decency. That's Big Brother. But how is that ideology maintained? How is it forced on us? You know, somebody making a claim, even a contradictory or untrue claim, does not a dystopia make. Compliance with those claims needs to be mandatory. It needs to be forced on us. And so, because Dave Rubin can't look at institutional power, because the problems he's pointing to cannot come from the establishment, he's left in this video with the thinnest argument imaginable, that the basic coercive mechanism through which our dystopia functions is cancel culture, something they bring up multiple times.
When we watch people cancel each other on Twitter and we watch mobs and everything go after everybody, in a way they're trying to pretend they're pious. I'm so great.
Right.
And if anyone else steps out of line and says something that I don't like, I don't believe, I'll destroy them because I'm so much better.
Now, to be clear, I'm not against every possible criticism of cancel culture. The word has such an amorphous definition. It's used by so many people that it would be kind of silly for me to say that nobody has a good criticism of it. That said, I think it's fair to say that if you just look at the raw issue of people getting canceled, it's just not as big a deal as conservatives are making it out to be. Most people, even most explicit racists or whatever, are not living in fear of getting canceled, are not standing under the boot of Twitter absolutely destroying them. It's just like not in the top 50 threats to the average person living in America right now. But more importantly here is the obvious point. If cancel culture on its own was able to produce an Orwellian dystopia, then why are conservatives always on their shit? It certainly seems like having money, having institutional support, having an audience makes cancellation literally impossible, implying here that one of these forces is more powerful than the other. Institutional power is stronger than Twitter cancel power. And if I'm wrong about that, then I guess I cancel Dave Rubin. He's canceled now. Dave Rubin is over. You're welcome, everybody. I've done it. You know, I think all of this leads to an important point about cancel culture that we often miss when we talk about it from the left. Because to us, cancel culture might speak negatively to the way that power works in our society. We might criticize corporations who profit off of our collective outrage. But to conservatives, canceling is more than that. It has this metaphysical, overpowering quality. And that's because because it is the only thing they can talk about, because it is the only power structure that at least has the veneer of not being institutional. It's something conservatives can look at and say, see, money is meaningless. Our power is meaningless. Just look at this PragerU video that rattles off 6 people who got canceled.
Cancellation involves social media mobs engaged in public shaming and the creation of blacklists. Virtually no one is immune. Not Kevin Hart, not J.K. Rowling, not Woodrow Wilson, not Drew Brees.
Woodrow Wilson, a literal dead president, was canceled just for loving the Ku Klux Klan. Need we say more? Cancel culture isn't just a thing to them. It's not just another problem. Rather, it is a bedrock justifying ideology for modern conservatism.
When people say they want to be politically correct, they want to make sure that people aren't offended. Now, you do that too long, and what are you left with? You're left with just nothing. You're left with an inability to do anything.
But okay, let's put all this behind us and ask a question. A question that still really baffles me and that we haven't gotten an answer to. Why are they making this video? Like, I get that they hate cancel culture and seem to think of it as some primary animating force of reality. But this is only an explanation of an idea that has already been assumed here. That the world we live in is a bleak dystopia. A world that could be called particularly Orwellian. And why would they want to assume such a thing? I mean, capitalism in our society is pretty much allowed to function unabated. Donald Trump, a pretty intense conservative in a lot of ways, is currently the president. Billionaires have enormous amounts of control over the way we live our lives and have an almost unprecedented amount of wealth compared to the average American. And these are the positions that PragerU advocates for, that Dave Rubin specifically has advocated for.
I think you do a flat tax. So basically what I lay out in the book is pretty much everybody can pay 18%, but if you make under 50 grand, you get a free ride. I don't even think that's totally right, but I think that would be the way of helping the people.
And even if cancel culture and SJWs were truly the bane of society, you'd think that would be far outweighed by the fact that we live in a conservative capitalist renaissance. So, why do they hate it so much? Why do they call it a dystopia? And I think the answer here is pretty dang simple, right? PragerU doesn't actually think that a conservative world is a good one. They know that their policies have not made society a better place, and more importantly, they are speaking to an audience of mostly working class Americans who know that fact very, very well. I mean, they're living in it, right? They're living in the shit society. You can't really tell them it's good because they know that it's not. And you can really see this understanding come through in one moment toward the end of the video. The main reason I decided to make this.
So Winston meets these other people in the inner party. They give him the secret book. He reads the secret book, and it turns out it's a setup. Or if it's not a setup, it's still a setup.
Yeah.
Because he's given the book by a member of the inner party that in this system, it even has its own opposition within it. There is no escape.
Right.
Even that opposition might be a false hope or a safety valve on the utter oppression.
Well, I think this is what people would say is sort of like our political system now is like this sort of fake duopoly.
Yes.
Right? It's like this fake, we've got, the Democrats or the liberals and the Republicans, the conservatives, whatever. And it's like, it seemingly is that those are the only choices. And yes, as long as the system only allows those choices, well, then those are the only choices. But are those really the only choices? You got to believe this or you got to believe this. I mean, no one really lives their life like that.
It seems like no matter who wins the election, no matter which party wins, certain things just keep on happening. We lose more and more of our freedoms. We rack up more and more of our debt. The culture keeps going more and more in one direction. It doesn't seem to matter who wins.
Holy shit, right? That's amazing. Because for one moment, these guys are actually interpreting 1984. They looked at a text about manufactured consent, about how even opposition to power can be assumed by power and against the people, and they said, shit. That's a bit like our society. Maybe there's a structure at the center of the state, at the center of power in general, that doesn't meaningfully represent what people want. Now, I'm not saying these guys are saying brilliant stuff in this moment, and I'm sure that whatever society they're talking about that would supposedly represent the will of the people would actually not do that. They are PragerU, after all. Dave Rubin is bad, but still, they are talking about 1984. They're not neutering the book here, making it about SJWs and cancel culture and NPR. No, they are using it as an opportunity to talk about power, the way it is distributed, and how it works. But of course, this can't last. I cut the clip short before, and I'll play the rest now.
It doesn't seem to matter who wins.
I dare make a pro-Trump comment. I don't know if I'm allowed.
Will certainly be censored by the Ministry of Truth on the internet.
Somebody's not going to be happy about this. But in many ways, when I was rereading it, I kept thinking, man, what they needed was a Trump.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because what was Trump, or what is Trump? He just sort of broke through all of this. If you're talking about how do you break the duopoly, how do you break the false choices, how do you break political correctness, all of these things, who has been the greatest breaker of those things?
What a fitting and tragic end to this idea, right? That in the one moment where it looks like they're saying something of value, something attentive to the text, something that's kind of transgressive, it is revealed to be meaningless and vapid to them. Just like what happens in 1984, we can oppose power and we can criticize power, but only when we can do those things as a prop. Wait, shouts Dave Rubin nervously. All those things we said before are totally problems, but Donald Trump is fixing it. He's got it under control. Now, this moment taken together doesn't make any sense. Of course it doesn't. For one thing, how exactly does Dave Rubin think that Trump has solved any of the problems they brought up together? Did Donald Trump destroy the duopoly of American politics? Has he adequately represented the will of the American citizen? Fuck, has he lowered the national debt, as they're so obsessed with? No, he hasn't. He hasn't done any of those things. But also, it just doesn't make any sense on the face of it, considering the other things they said in the video. Like, are we in a particularly Orwellian time?
George Orwell is describing here the reason it resonates with, not just now, perhaps at a particularly Orwellian moment.
If so, Donald Trump clearly hasn't fixed our dystopia. When they made this video, he had already been president for almost 4 years, and everything's still broken. They're still complaining about this. Clearly, he hasn't fixed the problem. So it doesn't make sense, but maybe it doesn't have to. Or rather, maybe the kind of sense I'm trying to apply to this video doesn't really work. It is, after all, the duty of the party to provide us two contradictory messages and ask us to not only accept them, but believe them. We must believe that the world is degenerate, decayed, broken down, the worst it's ever been, and we must believe that they're doing a great job running it. 10 out of 10 ruling class, perfecto. And if those two statements contradict each other in your mind, well, you just have to believe harder, I guess. So that's the end of the video. That's the end of the video. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, like, comment, subscribe, donate to me on Patreon if you want to. There's an extended cut of this video on there that I decided was really bad. Like, the intro is like 8 minutes long, and it's really boring, and if you pay me money, you can see how boring it is, I guess. Enjoy that. And now it's time for my Patreon question of the video. Dr. Thembo69 asks, what is your favorite style of denim jeans? So I don't like the square cut jeans that just go straight down the leg. I like a little taper. I don't wear skinny jeans, but I like them to conform somewhat to the shape of my leg. and I don't like the way it looks when it just goes straight down. I think it makes me look like a I don't know, kind of childlike. It's hard for me to explain why I hate it so much. Okay, thanks so much for coming. Hope you liked the video. Bye.